Sobek is a legendary Mokole abomination, not only in Werewolf the Apocalypse, but also Vampire the Masquerade. Sobek is rumored to have been embraced by Set himself, and only someone who is as powerful with blood magic as Set was would have been able to accomplish or even dream of accomplishing this singular task, for a couple of reasons which we'll get into. Set was a powerful antediluvian vampire embraced by one of Cain's children. Now Set, he went on to lead a different cult with his followers. There were many branches within his cult, and while many revered snakes, some revered the crocodile. One of those being the branches of Abd'al Sobek. This literally translates into slaves of the crocodile. This Typhonist cult revered Sobek. He was the embodiment, the incarnation of the beast inside, which vampires are trying to suppress or quell, or master in some cases. This cult takes things to the extreme. They indulge in the hunger, they indulge in their desires. If it makes them richer, they will do it. If it gives them an experience that they could not otherwise get, they will do it. They admire the strength, they admire the territorial nature of crocodiles, and they have used this as a model for infiltration of areas already under Setite control. Their founding temple remains in Egypt, and it is rumored to be the resting place of Sobek, should he still be alive or in existence. I still think he's alive, and we'll get into that after we talk a little bit about today's sponsor, and that would be hitting the like button. Now, the first problem we run into with Mokole abominations, and specifically Mokole abominations, they are supposed to be immune to vampiric embrace. Should a Mokole be embraced by a vampire, they will go into a frenzy. They will destroy their sire. They will destroy anything and everything around them until they are killed. And this will happen in one of two ways. Either the Mokole is stopped through significant power and their life is thus ended, or their life just expires at the sunrise of the next day. You know, whichever comes first. Now, the reason the Mokole are blessed this way is because of the Celestians Helios and Luna. Helios representing the sun, Luna representing the moon. Their blessing is as such so that the Mokole doesn't have to live out a life of horrors as an abomination. Now, the story goes that Set, who is an extreme master of blood magic, was able to overcome this blessing, and he needed all of his power, all of his skill, all of his cunning to overcome the blessings of the Celestine to allow Sobek to be turned into an abomination. The only reason that we know Sobek even existed in the first place is because of the Isis fragments. He was shown to be the leader of the crocodile people who lived near the Nile at that time. And this supposedly would have been in the time that gods walked the earth. And if you believe that Set was an actual god, then this lines up with that. Though I'm not sure this will actually line up with the Mokole history of the Lizard Kings. That will be more in the prehistoric times, and don't worry, we'll get to that in a little bit. We know Sobek existed because he is mentioned in the Isis fragments, along with Wadjet. Sobek was the chieftain of the crocodile people who lived on the Nile during this time, a time when supposedly gods walked the earth. That would be Set, if you believe that Set was a god, along with Isis, Horus, and the rest of them. I don't believe this lines up to the prehistoric times of Mokole Reckoning when they were the Lizard Kings. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. Sobek teamed up with the Bubasti as well as a pre-vampire, someone who wasn't a vampire yet, who was known as Wadjet. Wadjet is also mentioned in the Isis fragments. Now, this trio was supposed to protect Isis and Horus when Set was coming after them. Set had imprisoned Osiris and was making a run for the throne, and he wanted to eliminate some competition. Unfortunately, Wadjet was seduced by the power, the allure of Set, and was eventually turned into a vampire. However, she was able to break free of his control after Osiris had been imprisoned. She then teamed up with Sobek, as well as the Bubasti, to protect Isis and Horus while they were fleeing from Set. Now, unfortunately, Set did find Isis and Horus, and while we know what happened to those two, we don't know really what happened to Wadjet. She's just kind of disappeared from the annals of history, at least according to the followers of Set. If you ask the children of Osiris, I believe they do have a detailed record of what happened. Now, when Set found them, he did turn Sobek. although it did take quite a bit of effort, as previously mentioned. Set severed Sobek's connection to Helios. This would make him an abomination, but it would also make him a 4th generation Methuselah, the most powerful abomination in existence. Not much is known what happened to Sobek after this. I believe that he is still in existence, and there is rumors that he is in the original temple in Egypt. And this temple is supposed to be protected by many Gould crocodile shapeshifters. I believe this to be true. If he is resting, let him rest. You know what happens when any of the OG antediluvian vampires wake up. Imagine what would happen if a abomination of the same power level woke up. Now, it is said of these crocodile protectors for Sobek, the oldest one in existence acts as a form of oracle, relaying messages from Sobek to the Abd'al Sobek. Now, the second problem that we run into when it comes to abominations is the mental degradation that happens should you have an abomination that lives. It has been known to happen through history, more commonly with Guru than anything else. All abominations are terminated on sight by all Pharaoh, and if rumor or wind of one's existence spreads, then all of the Pharaoh will work together to kill it. So they typically don't have long lifespans. That, and the longer an abomination lives, the crazier it gets, as I just mentioned. Abominations are also not supposed to be able to embrace. They can't create their own abominations. Their vitae is dead. So if that's the case, how do we get Gould crocodiles protecting Sobek? I believe this is because of the cult of Abd'al Sobek. Pharaoh can be Gould. This does not mean that they are an abomination. This has happened with the Bubasti before, so why can't it happen with the Mokole? And since ghouling slows down the aging process, and Mokole tend to live a pretty long time anyways, that's how you can get them to live for so long. Now, the reason that I believe Sobek is still here is because of the Mnesis and what happens in the Age of the Lizards, also known as the Age of Kings. In modern day, the Mokole are just trying to survive the apocalypse, but in the Age of Kings, they were the peak of civilization. Now, during this period, the Mnesis was different. The Mnesis that Mokole know now is a trance-like state that is entered, and a Mokole can relive any of their ancestors' memories. Now, the problem with this is the memory is perceived to the viewer, so it may not actually be what has happened. If you're looking at a particular event, they may not have been there for that, they may have been at a different point, they may not remember it as exactly happened, so it can be unreliable. The Mnesis during the Age of Kings was different. It was almost a spiritual realm unto itself that the dinosaurs, the Mokole, could go into. And the danger with looking at the past is sometimes the past looks better than the future or the present. We all know somebody who won't stop talking about their glory days. Now, as a whole, the Mokole succumbed to this feeling. They didn't want to deal with the omens that were coming, telling them that their time in the sun was going to end, so they just collectively went into the Mnesis and lived in this dream state, lived in their memories as they believed them to be for a very long time until when they woke up. Their prophecy had been fulfilled. The world was different and they didn't need them anymore. Unfortunately, the Mokole had to learn a hard lesson from this, and they have survived and they have adapted, but the Mnesis has changed for them now. But that is the reason that the Mnesis has changed from what it was to what it is now. Along with a few other things, like in the Age of Kings, there was no gauntlet, and now there is. Now, I believe that Sobek is part of the Mnesis, as it existed as a spiritual world or a spiritual idea. And because he's part of it, it is the reason it is difficult to read his history to see what he's doing, because he's in a different part of the Mnesis than the rest of the Mokole can access. One could argue that him being there is still keeping the Mnesis alive as it is now. Now, you could also make the case that the Mnesis is being polluted or changing because Sobek's still being alive and being tainted as he is. If Sobek was to wake up and come back, that would be very, very bad. Not only for his sheer physical power, but the fact that in the Mnesis, as it existed in the Age of Kings, the one that Sobek should still be technically able to access or enter, you could enter this state collectively with friends or with other groups of people. Should he come back, likely he would have the ability to do that. And I believe that he wouldn't want to be woken up because the Mnesis is a representation of the past, or the past as you remember it. And if it's commonly more idyllic, then he's living in his glory days way back when. Now, if you'd like to know a little bit more about Abominations or Set the Vampire, click on your preferred video. Let me know in the comments below what you think about Sobek, whether he's still around. And if you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up on that. This video was voted on by my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much for participating in the vote. My name's Nathaniel. Thanks for stopping by, everyone.